Umesh sir, welcome.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Sagar
Just switch on
sir.
your video. Yeah, I can see you now. So sorry, Umesh sir, I was not able to join you earlier just because I'm in hospital with my father.
No, that's fine. Am I audible to you, Sagar?
Yes.
And is there any echo at the background?
No, it's not.
Okay, I've joined from other device also.
Okay, sure.
Because I will be sharing screen from this one. So if you can add
Okay.
that also to this, it will be great.
Yeah, you can just share this. You can just join from the same link which I share with you. Na? Or Santosh, are you there?
हाँ बोल सर.
मिस्टर उमेश राठोड अटेंडी मध्ये आहे त्यांना एक हे कर ना शिफ्ट कर पॅनलिस्ट मध्ये.
बरोबर.
उमेश राठोड.
हो.
So Umesh sir, Kshitija will be going to introduce. She is a GSEC and she leads from HCM and a quite enthusiastic personality. She will be taking over the session for hosting and everything.
Thank you, Sagar.
Yeah.
So let's wait for 5 minutes till everyone is joining.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the students are in the internship, so they might get a little bit late, but they will join. Yes. Umesh sir knows very well, being an alumni, he is aware of all the things. So along with us, we also have got Dr. Garima Sharma. She is the Associate Dean for IIC and for Research and HR. So she takes care
I guess
of
I met Garima Sharma ma'am at IIT Bombay a couple of years back. I'm like just before Corona, I guess.
Hello, sir.
Hello, ma'am.
Good to meet you
ma'am.
online.
Good to see you, ma'am. So, yeah, Corona disrupted everything.
Yeah, otherwise we would have this in campus only. We
And you could
remember
have
we
in
had the demo
leisure.
day also, a demo
Yes,
day
yes.
for we done for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I guess that was the last time I visited the campus also before Corona.
Yeah, I guess it is 2019. I guess it was kind of 2019 or 2020. April month, same year.
Right. So all the sessions are going online right now, right?
Yeah, that's mentioned by you. Corona disrupted everything. So all the IS sessions gone on a toss for online kind of thing. Though we are planning for workshops or something. This batch is lucky that at least they had a trying 3 offline kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
We got one hackathon experience, overnight hackathon experience.
Oh, nice. I was a part of the design thinking and design innovation hackathon by MIT Media Lab in 2014.
Okay.
And it was, I'm like students who are participating in such events really get the nick of, starting up or getting an insight as to how people think and what all new insights can come. And the best part was we were having, few young ones also. There were this 2 young kids from Bengaluru who are developing their apps, and so you never know who can inspire you. Being part of this ecosystem itself gives you lots of push.
Yeah, actually. So you can just share a couple of your points also, being from alumni, then started a entrepreneurship journey also. Just
Definitely.
for 5 minutes also, it can be really encouraging for the students.
Yes, sir. Would like to hear some tips from you.
हेलो उमेश सर, आपको सेकंड डिवाइस पे सर एक प्रॉम्प्ट आया रहेगा जिसको आपको
Yes, I received it. Thank you.
Kshitija, I think you can start now. It's 5 minutes are there. Over. Yeah, sure. All the best.
Right, sir.
One sec. Subhash, just start the YouTube live. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
So good evening, everyone. I, Kshitija Moite, welcome you all to the session on lean startup and minimum valuable product or business. I'm happy to welcome our guest speaker for the day, Mr. Umesh Rathod, an alumnus of our institute. But before we begin, let me give you all a brief introduction of our speaker. Mr. Umesh Rathod is a think tank working for enhancing the startup ecosystem of India through mentoring and research in collaboration with global startup ecosystem. He is techno management postgraduate and an entrepreneur at heart. He has reached out to more than 4.5 lakh plus students across India since 2010. He is the author of The Fun of Being in a Startup, which focuses on startups in educational campuses across India. Also, Startup Chanakya focused on Acharya Chanakya's learnings for budding startup enthusiasts, educators, and entrepreneurs. He is empaneled as a mentor of change since 2018, a part of Utter Innovation Mission. He is also founder of Mission Catalyst NGO and has worked for rural sustainability projects since 2014. Currently, he mentors early stage startups and specializes in developing lean marketing strategies. He has received certain awards such as Karamveer Bahurao Patil Award for his significant contribution to technical education and propagating STEM education to masses. Global Teaching Excellence Award for his contribution in teaching at international stage. Thank you, and now over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Kshitija and Sagar, and the team at V School for inviting me for this session. I hope it will be insightful and there will be few takeaways. As I always say to the budding students at campuses, that when we have such sessions, it is not that everyone we are expecting to go out in the market and do a startup. It's all about what key takeaways inspire you to be a game changer or doing something for your nation. So we have so many problems, right, as a nation. So what ignites you to be different and try your own methods, try your own ideas into that ecosystem. So let me start with a short presentation which I have prepared for this day. I hope it's visible.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so you can put forward your questions and other aspects into the chat box while we are going through this session, and I would be happy to take few questions from YouTube Live as well at the end. So Kshitija, kindly keep me posted, and all the students, make sure you put your questions in the chat box. So I would happily give 5 to 10 minutes at the end to take on some queries. Okay, let's start. When we talk about this concept, lean startup, okay, from where this concept came in. So there are a few of the authors who have written some books on this. Eric Ries has published Lean Startup. You might be aware of our own an Indian origin, Ash Maurya, who created Lean Canvas, which is used by institutions like mine, Lean Campus startups and various other institutions, where they talk about how you can start as a lean body or a group who eventually turns into a business. So when we look at a startup, it's temporary organization, okay, and it's designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. So all the people out there who are starting up right now are in search of this unique thing which can be sustainable, okay. And when we talk about lean startup method, as mentioned by Eric Ries, entrepreneurs are everywhere. Entrepreneurship is management in a nutshell. It's about a validated learning. Okay, you have gone through multiple ideas, you have seen a lot of failures, you pivoted, and so that's why it requires validation. It's built on build, measure, and learn. Okay, and innovation accounting. So what is that new you want to do it? As you might have heard about Startup India program by Government of India. It talks about technology, as a very important quotient when you say you are a startup. It's not something which what people regularly do or what has been already existed. What is that new you will try to add to it? So I'll give some notions here and there. I'm not just posting what Eric Ries has talked about. I believe this system fairly existed way beyond Eric Ries' thought of lean startup. In Vedas and Upanishads and all other aspects, when we look at it, has emerged this concept. The term has been given now, but this concept fairly is by large known to humanity for a while now. So talking about top 10 mistakes of entrepreneurs. Okay, let's start with the mistakes. First, multiplying big numbers by 1%. Okay. Second, scaling up too soon. We want to find that investor who will fund our idea. So we want to scale up because every other person in the ecosystem is trying to find that investor who will fund their ideas, and they will be unicorn. They look for partnering very soon, pitching instead of prototyping. So you'll see a lot of competitions where you're pitching your ideas, but you're not maybe participating in hackathons where you can prototype and test those ideas. So it's really important how you think of prototyping first. Using too many slides and too small a font when you're pitching, maybe. Doing things serially. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you have gone through design thinking process, you'll come to know that it's something parallel, it's to and fro, right? It's not a one-way journey. Believing 50% of ownership is equal to control. It's not completely like that. And believing patents is defensibility only. So obviously, patents make a lot of difference when you're trying to do something new and innovative. But what is that which that patent is going to suffice? What kind of problem you're trying to solve? Okay, and does that fit in that ecosystem? Hiring in your own image. What kind of people you work with, what kind of people you kind of hire, and befriending your VCs and thinking VCs can add value at the end of the day. So we can talk about this, by large for, hours, but these are some of the key points I wanted to make sure you are aware. Okay, just a second. Yeah. Okay, so as I mentioned, many of the people are looking for sustainable ideas, and that's where a business model comes in. Every other investor, you must have seen the Shark Tank also by now, and many of you might be maybe inspired to be part of the session looking at Shark Tank. The what we can say fight is all about what is the business model, how sustainable it is, and what is that you are bringing for the people for whom you are solving the problem at the end. So you must have seen this chart, which is also lean canvas, or you can say the business model canvas, which has 9 factors, and every factor plays a very important role. So I'll not go into that because I believe by now you should be aware of this, and we are talking about lean startup and MVP more, so I'll focus on that aspects. But in a nutshell, there are 9 blocks, and they answer how you are going to solve the problem, what is the problem, and who are people with whom you are going to solve the problem at the end, creating value for the stakeholders. So what is the cash flow? The use of the business model canvas is to describe, discuss, design, challenge, improve, innovate, invent, pivot, or choose. So you might have multiple ideas. If you start working on that and putting those things in a business model canvas, you come to know that what are the challenge in solving that problem. You come to know if you want to design that as a product or a service, what you will have to go through, okay, and what is the feasibility. So you can say that it kind of helps a startup founder or a young, wannabe entrepreneur as to what exactly, I want to do and how I will be doing it, and what challenges or the roadblocks I have to go through. When you talk about, lean canvas or the business models, the basic underlying function is who is your customer, for whom you are solving the problem, and how does a company get and keep growing from those customers. It's not only so engineers will think about, oh, I'll develop an inverter like in 3 Idiots, virus inverter. But what's next once you develop that product? Is it sustainable? Will you be able to come up with multiple versions of it. What is that new you are going to keep on adding to that, model? So it's not like coming up with a one product or one service. You need to think ahead and by large, what versions of those products you'll be, launching. And lean startup kind of helps us in identifying what is the current business which has existed and how we are going to pivot or compete with them. Being small, being relatively having less funds, being having a small team. What is that different or unique will be trying to do? Some of the questions which business model components help you answer, okay? And this will be on record, so you can take your sweet time to actually go through this image. There are multiple questions with which you can fill up this canvas, and there's hell lot of information available on the internet where they tell you how to fill it up, which block goes first and which goes last, and how you connect the dots. So now, like we have the business model canvas, which is kind of inspired by multiple tools and methods. We have value proposition canvas. What is that you are bringing in for the customers? What kind of pains are you addressing, and what kind of gains you are giving for the customer, right? So how you are developing your product and services which help in gain creators and pain relievers, right? So that's how business model canvas kind of is interrelated to the value proposition canvas. And what kind of customer jobs your product or service is going to do. So customer has multiple jobs to do in a day, from getting up in the morning to going to sleep at night, okay? And you know by now that how many new ideas, how many new businesses or advertisements are pitched to us every day on all our digital media. So where does your product, where does your idea kind of fit in, right? So this is again just of same. Okay, we will not go through this in detail. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. So validation creates, kind of a very important aspect of your startup journey. And we look for validation everywhere. Okay, be it a relationship, we are looking for a friend, maybe a partner, maybe we are looking for some kind of an insight for someone on getting some work done or getting into some kind of a job. We look for validation, right? Whether that job is good or not, whether that organization is good or not. So validation, in a nutshell, you understand what it means. Likewise, when you are thinking of doing a startup, when you don't have a lot of money, not a team to execute it, it becomes more challenging. And what is that you are going to insist upon, right? So that's why lean startup comes into the picture, and it helps us to test what your business model hypothesis is, right? In the first or the second slide, we talk about build, measure, and learn. So when I look at the, why, how, and what, which is learn, measure, learn, build, and measure, what I want you to know is doing a startup is like a hypothesis, and I know Dr. Garima Sharma over here, who's a researcher herself, might agree on this point, that when you are doing a research work, you go through a lot of thesis work, you go through a lot of research paper, you go through a lot of content which has already been written. And for a young, early stage startup founder, it's not different. You have to first understand what is that you have learned, why you want to solve the problem, okay? Whether the problem really exists. Then comes how you're going to solve it. What is that you're going to build to solve that problem? And last one, how you're going to measure it. So that's what is the measure. And the measure could be different for different startups. Like if you're developing an app, you're an app-based startup. Okay, an aggregator. So how many downloads in a month did you get? Okay, how many number of customers actually came and made purchase? So that could be a differentiator from your competitor. So most startups lack a structured process for testing their hypothesis, and that's why just going and pitching your ideas does not make sense. No startup business plan survive first contact with customers. And that is why it is really important to get out of the building approach. It's not a business, right? It's not a business plan which you're pitching. So go to your customers, interact with them, and lean startup or the design thinking process helps in sufficing to get to know your customer and what exactly they are facing. Now, the another aspect is what is your market size, right? In Shark Tank and various other shows these days, you might have heard about TAM, SAM, and TM. So what is your total addressable or available market? How big is the universe if you're planning to start a business? Okay, so what is the total available market? What is the already served available market? And what is your target market in that? How you are going to target and identify your customers, and what is that niche aspect with which you're going to work, right? So how big is the universe? How many can I reach with my sales channel? And for a startup, who will be the most likely buyers? Right? Those who are in marketing, when who are attending this session, you'll understand what is growth hacking. And growth hacking in the sense, identifying who are the buyers of your product, who are the buyers of your idea, even before it comes into the market by large. So TAM also helps us to calculate the sanity check, whether you are heading in the right direction. It's not that you are doing 10 different things. When you are a lean startup, you're focused on solving one problem. You cannot go 10 different directions and think that, okay, I can apply all the resources and get things done. It's not possible. So for you as a lean startup, you need to think, oh, this is my concern. This is the area where I'm going to hit, and I'm going to hit really hard, right? And there you create a differentiator compared to existing businesses. And from there, once you succeed in that, then maybe you can think of entering into different domains and trying to break those barriers or achieving success in those domains. And also you need to understand how your consumer buy the products. If you are an innovative startup, and like when we talk about lean, there's a great example of WhatsApp, right? How many people were working WhatsApp when it kind of got sold to Facebook? And you might be aware, the answer is in between 50 to 60 people. And I guess it got sold for about 18 billion US dollars. So how was it possible for a team of 50 people to come up with an idea, okay, scalable, sustainable, and being able to achieve such a great what we can say status? So you need to understand the market, you need to understand how consumers think, and who are the consumers who are kind of innovators who will go with your innovative idea. So you might have seen this product life cycle, right? And you will be also learning it in some of the other courses where we talk about innovators who are ready to go in the market and try something new. How you're going to attract them? Because these people are going to push this idea to visionaries, right? Then comes the pragmatists, and then the conservators. And at the last, we will have the skeptics. That is, they are not kind of really interested about it. But this blue segment, which you are seeing, this plays a very crucial role, right, for any startup. And that is why it is really important to know that if I'm coming up, if I'm putting my efforts, I also need to know for whom I'm solving the problem, who are the people who will be ready to pay me for that kind of an idea. Okay. Then also you need to understand the hype cycle and technology adoption life cycle. And you might have seen this in the campus at Innovi Labs. I guess Sagar kind of sits over there. So you might have seen how technology is triggered, where it gets inflated with the expectation. Then there's a trough of delusionment. Some of the technologies work, some of them don't. There's a slope of enlightenment. Some of them kind of proceed with time, and then there's a plateau of productivity. So that's between the customers also. You'll see a lot of technology trigger, and that's why these people are the innovators, which are kind of only 2.5% of the product life cycle, play a very, very important role. And then comes the early adopters, right? So how you're going to create that hype amongst them, and what will trigger them to buy your product or try your product, right? So 2.5% there. Competitive positioning compass, right? We know that there are startups, who will think of, being targeting to journalists. There would be supporters, there would be specialists and skeptics. Now, how you're going to position between your competition, right? How will you identify who are the visionaries? How you'll find who are the conservators, who are the pragmatists, right? So for that, you need design thinking. For that, you need to be able to read the market. For that, it requires a lot of learning what the market is going through and what kind of new competitors are arriving and how you are able to catch up with them, right? So once you start delivering, right, here we call it the chasm, which you can see in the red block. So once you are able to go through that 2.5% and the early adopters kind of, and in between that, you come across the chasm. And to break the chasm is what I previously mentioned, that having a focused approach, not going into the 10 different things, trying to identify one big problem which the customer is facing in the current available product, or coming up with a new product which is able to target and identify and solve that problem. And once you have that focus, you come up with a brilliant product in that, you'll be able to cross the chasm. Otherwise, because there will be a lot of competitors and new products or mimic products, it will be difficult for a startup or any business to cross the chasm and move ahead. Now, here is another example of, a lean method of understanding the challenges or the design thinking processes. So how you design, right? There is a wonderful story of, design thinking of kids in Nepal who were facing problem. Like they were, young kids, facing death because of harsh temperatures, and there was no availability of, what we call it, the heater system for them. And so there was a startup who identified that sleeping bags can actually suffice it, and then they kind of took it to them and kind of help them to sustain. And um, an idea so simple, cost effective, which does not require electricity, was able to fulfill that need, right? So how you kind of design and how you are able to come up with that kind of idea with the limited resources again. So when you're pitching, okay, earlier I said that, you don't prototype. Many of the people are interested in pitching and getting the funds. My clear concerns and, precise answer is first try to prototype yourself, build some traction on your own, and then maybe go for some kind of funding. It will be easier to build trust upon that for your investors, be it a government, be it a VC, be it any other investor. When you have some kind of attraction and you have a minimum viable product to show them, right? Because they now see that you are really interested in doing something and you have already put in some efforts. If it's not the case, then it will be difficult for you because, just a 10-page deck today, anyone can build it. We can see so many young ones doing it. So pitching is important. What do you focus on? What is the hook of the case? Why you are solving the problem? Who is your customer? What are the pains? This you can always design through design thinking process. And when you have consumer insight or customer insights and you interact with them, you have a, you have a customer persona and you develop on that. What is the problem? How you make your audience aware about the problem and whether it exists or not. What is the unique solution you propose for them? What kind of a team you have? Can you solve the problem which you are trying to pitch? Do you have the capacity? You have the learnings, you have the knowledge and the right set of skills to do that. What is attraction? Have you ever built a prototype or you have a minimum viable product which you have tested in some XYZ market? And lastly, giving up, your idea to a VC and sharing your details across to them and not going back to them until, giving them some, space, giving them some time to think about and exactly, what is the problem which you're trying to solve and giving them some time to study exactly what you're trying to do. So it's not necessary that you'll get a funding right away like they show in reality shows. Sometimes it might take time. Sometimes it might take a lot of word of mouth and other investors who are in that domain may be getting interested and inclined towards what you're trying to pitch and what is that you're trying to solve. So learning and assumption testing is another process for validation. For big company it's different. For a startup it's different because a big company is more about knowledge and startup is more about assumptions, right? We just go on gut feeling. When you're even starting off, the process, I mean, like when we started off, obviously it was a gut feeling that we'll be able to pull it off. And that is a gut feeling every startup founder has, right? And you cannot know all the things in the world. So it is basically assumptions more. And a big company, which was once a startup, also started with a lot of assumptions. And even when a big company comes up with a new product, they have assumptions. Like Google Glass, which did not succeed the market, right? We did not see that product did not see the light in the market. So their approach is different. It's a deliberate one. For startup, it's emergent. For focus, they have executional processes in place. And here we have test assumptions. In Matrix, when we talk about that is how they measure, it's finance driven. How much money we are going to make, what market we are trying to target, right? And in startup, it's more about learning based. How was this, consumers trying to find our MVP? What are the suggestions that they make? How we are taking note of it? And how we are going to make changes in that and move, right? So it's not an easy task. And that's why not everyone can do a startup, right? And that's why I always say that first generation entrepreneurs took a lot of pain to create that kind of a family managed business, which today sees the, day of the life. So hypothesis testing and the insight, you start with a hypothesis, you have a design experiment to check on your consumers, the persona which you have created. Those could be hypothetical, and then going in the public and interacting with similar demography, then testing it, getting insight, then again you hypothesize, right? And that's why it cannot happen in a classroom setting. It cannot happen in a room. You have to move out. You have to interact with your consumers for whom you are building your product. Try to identify the pain points. Try to identify how better you can do the things. And it's not always about a new idea, right? A eureka moment. It can be something which is already existing, but how different you can do it. What new method you can add to it, right? We'll be talking about this in further slides. So most startups fail from a lack of customers than from a failure of product development, right? The product which you design is not expected by the market at all, right? And another case could be the consumers or the customers are not existent for the product which you are designing for, right? And that's why the products or the features which are known and the customer problem which are known, when this matches, you're able to kind of, be in a in a situation where you are having the two unknowns information. And that is really important. But in the lean startup, that's not a condition. We go with a lot of assumptions. Now you will say, how will I be able to identify what should be the gut feeling? How do I calculate? So Kickstarters, right? Indiegogo. These are a lot of other websites which are available in the market where you can, use your hypothesis, create a minimum viable product, pitch it to the audience, and see and test what are their feedback, what are their grievances, what is that they're expecting, right? Showcase that video to many more people and get insights from them. So the customer development process is also a kind of a tool which helps you to understanding who is your customer and not failing due to the lack of customers, right? So try many times before you get it right. So who is the customer? You need to identify the customer discovery. Who is your customer for whom you're solving the problem? Did your customer validate your idea? If not, again, go back and pivot, right? And this process will continue until and unless the customer has validated the idea. And validation, like if you ask about Kickstarter and Indiegogo platforms, these are really cool because you have a virtual audience, and you have this. If you're creating a product also, or maybe a service, you can always pitch it to the audience, share your app link on that, and ask them to download it and give it a few of the insights for trial, as many of the startups do. And there you can see some kind of attraction building up. There you can see how many times a user came again and again to try out that kind of a product or service, right? And that's how you create your consumers. That's how you are creating your customer. And then you execute, you create a uh, better team, you get funded, you scale up. So try many times before you get it right. It's okay to fail, so to learn from it, right? Many of the startups will fail. And when we talk about India as a country, that's why I say with lean campus across the country, in campuses, when you try and fail, it does not cost you much. When you go outside in the market and then you try after your education, the cost, the risk factor is considerably more. So it's really important for you to focus on what is that. If you're trying to do a startup, start thinking of those ideas, thinking of the teams, thinking of the people involved, all those aspects early. Only move to the next stage when you learn enough and reach the escape velocity. Now, there are some startup owners manual which are also available for you as a ready reckoner, right? And this can also come handy in customer discovery. So state your business model hypothesis, go out in the market, test the problem. Do people care about it? The kind of MVP or the kind of solution or the problem which you have identified. Test the product solution, show them that prototype, show them the the design which you're talking about, get feedback, get insights, verify the model and pivot or proceed. And the customer validation can help with respect to when you are ready to sell it. So you have a minimum viable product, you get out of the building, you go out in the market, you sell it, develop product and company positioning. And then the first question would be, can you pivot or proceed from there? Here also you require some kind of a validation. So it's not a process which ends at one stage, right? It's a continual learning process with the consumers or the customers. Now, what is a pivot? We talked about, a brief about lean startup and the nitty-gritties involved. But when we talk about pivoting, it's a change to business model component based on consumer feedbacks. And pivot is not a failure at all. It actually helps you to succeed. Earlier days, the process of startup was you took a fund, you have an idea, go to a person, your friend or whatever, relatives, bank, you pitch the idea, you have a research or you have a project plan, you get funded, you go out, you create, that product. Then you start going to the market and trying to sell it. And voila, the product failed. So pivoting today or the lean startup process helps you to reduce your failures because you're continuously touch with the customer. You're already having some kind of attraction. You're already testing up in the market what you are trying to do. So you are updated as to what color, what design, what changes, right? When you talk about UX, UI, how the consumer feels about it. And many of the people do it on LinkedIn post as well. If you are on LinkedIn and you are checking on some of the posts of startup founders, that's a good way to do it. So pivots may happen in the customer discovery phase. Failure will happen. It's normal. Misunderstanding or just getting wrong key assumption about startup model or business model, who your customers are, what problems they need to solve, what features would solve them, how much customers would pay to solve them. And these are some of the pivots responses, for these mistakes. So anywhere in these areas, you can identify what you will pivot in your business model because it's not hard and fast. You can always go back and you can modify it, right? Pivot is a structured course correction designed to test on, a new fundamental hypothesis about the product strategy, engine of growth, etc. And pivots are vision driven. At a point, we thought it will be an end for Tata Nano as we speak. But today, we are looking at a new version of Tata Nano being released in the market sooner or later, which will be an electric vehicle. A business model existed, which had a different, design or ingredients being revamped to suit the current market, right? That's exactly what pivoting could be, right? So what you do when hypotheses do not match the reality, it's not like you go back identifying a new idea. If you're married to that idea, pivoting is a great tool which can help you get through. Talking about the minimum viable product, okay, it's a strategy used for fast and quantitative market testing of a product or product features. It's an iterative process of idea generation, prototyping, presentation, data collection, analysis, and learning. So when we talk about minimum viable product, what is the least design with minimum tools, with minimum features you can present to your consumers by large? Okay, when we talk about app, how it could be a very simple design. When Facebook was created, you might have, if you're a startup enthusiast, you are going to be an entrepreneur in the future. So you might have seen Social Network movie and various other movies. And you can see the product which was initially created was not the final product as we see today. It has evolved. No product is final. It is evolving, right? It has to match the market. It has to match the era, technological advances. Look at how TVs have evolved. There was a CRT, cathode ray tube inside. An engineer used to come at home and kind of work on it and, make changes in that. Today, if your TV has a problem, they can simply either change the TV or change a module, which is, plug and play. So every model evolves, every design evolves. And that is why when you're thinking of a lean startup, instead of going with a full-fledged product in the market by investing a hell lot of money, how you can go with a minimum design and reach to your consumers or the customers and gain some insights from them. So that's the trick with lean startups. This cannot be done with businesses. Usually businesses don't do. Today they have accelerators, they have incubation centers, and they take help of young startup founders or the people with startup ideas to go and do this thing for them. But it's really difficult for existing businesses to go down and kind of, get the nick of it. So it is really important for them. Obviously, it's not a question because they are well funded. But for a lean startup, it's really important that you understand this minimum viable product designing process. Now, if you ask me why Dropbox is more popular than the other designs, because they have designed it in such a way, right? And they have this what we can say features which suffice and builds unique and differentiation between what existed. Let's talk about Zoom. There were WebEx there was Google Meet, there was Skype, right? There was so many Teams and many other platforms already existed before even Zoom pitched in before Corona. What made Zoom the most used feature? Why we are having this meeting on Zoom? And there is an answer hidden in this question. What is the usability of it? Okay, how it got evolved. Existing product could not match to that level, but a new entrant was able to do it comparatively. So what made it a success? And these are the questions which you need to ask and answer, right? If you're thinking of having that kind of a mindset, because if you're going to be a startup founder, you need to have that kind of a mindset also to see how businesses are evolving and how the market's being created. So 3 stages of startup. First, problem solution fit, that is a customer development. Second, product market fit, that is a customer validation. And then third one, the scale, customer creation. Finding a problem worth solving, that is discovering a viable solution, customer interviews, demo page for the product on a website, minimum viable business, website if you can design. Then, based on the traction which you're having, how many people are landing on that page? How many people have given feedback about the product or the service? What is that minimum viable business? One of the aspects of what your business could do, right? Like Facebook started with rating the pictures, right? And that's how Facebook, arrived. So it has to be something very simple where people can just, quickly try it out. Don't complicate it. Product market fit, customer validation, that is the most important stage. Passing the stage would have you validate your product and business. And this is a pre-product market where you have not designed your full-fledged product so far. You are just thinking about, or you have a minimum viable product. So you can try a Kickstarter, you can try Indiegogo, you can try various other platforms. I'm not propagating any of them just because these exist and are better ones. So this can also help you to gain insights. See how the creators over there have made videos, how they are pitching their ideas, how they are getting the funds, right? And that getting funds itself is a validation, right? Because people have invested. You can always also say a drop by and give a thumbs up, not money directly, maybe. So what is that? How you are going to measure? And content creators use it on YouTube, right? When they create videos, they ask you to give a thumbs up if you like it, or subscribe. So every time they're trying to kind of get validated on what content they are creating. Lastly, the sale or the customer creation is the focus on growth only after you have validated your product. And for that, you need to have a product market fit in place, conversion optimization. You need to have the first driver and the second driver. That is how you're going to scale up from there, how you're going to reach out to new markets, hiring new teams, creating better versions of the pre-existed product. The scalability, there could be 12 keys for it: problem severity, differentiating uniqueness, validation, proof, operational scalability, competitive alternativeness, disruption potential, customer acquisition, funding strategy, market potential, unfair advantage, revenue model, team capability. And all of this is divided into 4. As you can see, the first 3 is market opportunity. Second one, value proposition. Third, early adoption. And fourth, that is 10, 11, 12, are a part of the growth fundability, right? And when we look at it in a larger perspective from customer discovery to company building. So if you are at the pre-stage, right, and you want to get to the expansion stage, so you are right now at the scalability challenge. And to do that, at the pre-stage, you will have to have a concept idea. You need to have a business model in place. You need to have problem solution fit, minimum viable product market fit in place, right? So between pre-seed stage and seed stage, first scalability challenge for any startup founder, right? The other aspect is for startup founders not seeing the opportunities, cannot see it at its nascent stage. Uh, if you ask Mark Zuckerberg back then in Harvard, in the dorm, when he was building the Face app, did he see the future, how it's going to turn out? He had no clue. So when you are doing all this stuff, maybe you will not have, you know, you will not be able to see those opportunities. And you're not, that's why taking it seriously once you have seen it, or you are not understanding when it has become successful. So wait until it's too late, right? And when we compare this to the lean and traditional startup methods, so you have strategy, new product process, engineering, and organization. So lean will talk about business model, hypothesis driven. Traditional would be business plan and implementation driven. And likewise, I think I have briefly given more insights into this, so you can refer to these slides later, right? So failure, when you talk about, is kind of expected in lean startup because it's not a full-fledged product and you don't have a, a business in place. So you're just trying out over there. You are trying your hypothesis, and a hypothesis as a researcher can go wrong, right? So you have to be mentally prepared when you are going out as a lean startup founder. Fix by iterating on ideas and pivoting away from the ones that don't work. For businesses, it could be an exception by fixing or firing executives. Right? So some more reading which you could do. Innovate or evaporate, right? So how you are going to search, build, and execute a scalable startup, having a transition buyout, converting into a large company, right? And here is where the sustaining innovation comes in place. So goal is to solve for unknown customer and unknown features for a lean startup. But when you look at the large company, the goal is for identifying an existing market, known customer, known product features and needs. So idea is not to be a lean startup forever, but transition from a scalable startup to a large company, from unknown to the known, right? And in transition or buyout, there could be a phase where your business model, can grow XYZ times, and there's a venture capital which could be funded, and maybe you want someone else to take over. Maybe you are not made to, you think you are not able to run that big organization. So the decisions up to the startup founder, whether they are ready to kind of scale it up or are ready for a buyout, right? And new market, new tech, customer and challenges or channels are the ones which are defining how a scalable startup will function. So some of the learnings from the session so far: search for a business model, which is the front end of your startup process. Goal is to find repeatable, sustainable, or scalable model and then executing it. Customer and agile development are the processes to search and build the model. You have to be adaptable. Execution requires operational planning and financial forecast. And product management is a process of executing the model. It is true in the smallest startup or the largest company in a nutshell, right? So a lean startup is learn, build, and measure. You have ideas. If you are into app or IT, you'll be coding, then you have data, and you can refer this to understand more into what is learn, build, and measure, right? And how those processes could be used and what are the tools by which you can measure it. Okay. So, yeah. So when you're talking about strategy for business model hypothesis, you have to search. And when you're thinking about strategy for execution, you need operational plan and financial forecast. Processes, you need to have customer development and agile development. In execution, product management, agile or waterfall development. Organization, you need to think about customer development team, founder driven. And when you talk about organizational execution, you need to think about functional organization by department. And for this, education in the terms of business model design, customer development, startup team building, entrepreneurial finance, agile development, marketing is required when you're searching. And when talking about execution, you need to turn it into our OB, HR, management, accounting, modeling, strategy, and other aspects of management. The instructional strategies could be experiential, constructivist, learner-centered, and inquiry-based. And here, it's a case, lecture, small group, or mentorship, right? So that's while you are executing. So there's a difference between when you're searching and the execution when it happens, right? And that's it. In a nutshell, this is what we can cover in an hour or so. And I guess we are roughly on time. And I hope I have given you a gist about what Lean Startup is. Eric Ries has given a very good insight, but it's a very heavy on the language. And, so I have also my book, The Fun of Being in a Startup, which talks about it in a very general and a simplistic way of giving information to fellow Indians. That's my part of, educating the young minds. The second book, Startup Chanakya, released last year at Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs in November 21. And there are a couple of more which are in the pipeline. So thank you so much for listening to my session. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being such a wonderful patient listeners. I would be happy to take a few of the questions and would be happy to connect with you guys on the LinkedIn. As a fellow alumni, if you are facing any problem in your startup journey, do write to me. I'm already connected to some of the startup ecosystems in the states across India, like Startup Uttarakhand, Startup UP, Startup Maharashtra, Maharashtra State Innovation Council, Society, and then entrepreneurship hubs. And also I monitor some of the global startup ecosystem and connected to them. So I might be of some help to give you some insights, right? Finally, it's you, what you really have to do. So thank you once again.
So, sir, one student has a question regarding MVP. You had said that it's fast and iterative process. So it's just the initial model. So there will be changes happening to the process or model, or how is it? Like, could you just elaborate on that?
Yeah. So MVP is, so I hope you have used, some of the apps you're on your own when you, kind of get a demo version of an app or a pitch from some of the young startups that, this is a new product which we are launching in the market and we would request you to give it a try maybe. So even that product is not final, right? What I'm trying to say over here is MVP is a product which is built with a minimum finance, right? Which is simplistic in nature to give an insight to your customer, how it will finally look, but not exactly what it will look. The whole idea of MVP is that you're not investing in the full-fledged idea right now. Because you know that as a lean startup, as a first generation entrepreneur, you might fail in that all efforts. So what you do, you kind of gain insights from the people, right? You kind of go to the people and interact with them, gain insights, what changes, what color, what design, aesthetics, UI, UX. It could be any XYZ factor which plays a very vital role in your product, and gain those insights from them. It could be also a transaction time. For example, IRCTC. When you're booking your tickets on IRCTC, if it's taking time, and if there is another app which is taking a less amount of time, it's not data heavy, it's going to be a game changer. People will shift just because this different app is taking less amount of time and consuming less amount of data. That's exactly why Zoom is a hit compared to WebEx and other examples which I gave, right? So MVP is, in a nutshell, making it, a design which like when you made, paper boats in school, right, in different designs. But these were not the actual ones which could go in the sea, right? It could float for a minute or two and maybe then sink. But it gave an idea, it gave a design, approach to you and to consumer as well as to how the aesthetics will look at, finally would look like. So yeah, it could be a painting, it could be a design, it could be an app which has a feature with a name on it, maybe, right now not integrated completely. So yeah.
Thank you so much for addressing the question. There is one more question regarding the 3 stages of a startup. So the student asks that what suggestion do you have for students to go from stage 1 to the third stage, final stage?
So which stage are you talking about? Learn, build, and measure?
Problem solution fit, sir.
Okay. So problem solution fit. Many of the startups will fail. There is a study on it. There are research papers being published already why startups fail. And I also kind of presented one slide on that initially. You need to understand as a founder that what are the areas or the functions when you do a startup can go wrong. Okay, everyone has a capacity and everyone has a limitation. When you are doing a startup, it could be a technical limitation, right? It could be a psychological limitation. It could be, maybe not having those skill as a limitation. Like for example, me, I want to design XYZ app, which can solve XYZ problem, but I don't know programming, for example. So how I'm going to match, and fulfill that need which is required for me to succeed further. So finally, when you look at problem solution fit, finding the problem will take a lot of time. And you have to go to your customers, maybe, assumed customers, create personas around them, what challenges they are facing. Is it a niche market you are entering into? Is it a global problem or many people have that problem? So more time, I guess almost 80% of your time should be on finding the problem, then solution. Then fit should not be a kind of a challenge that much, because you have given considerable amount of time and what is that people are facing. So there are many cases. There's an interesting case of Blockbuster and Netflix, right? So read about those cases, why Netflix got succeeded. Even now, many of the startups are, in debt and not making that much amount of profit maybe. But what is that a differentiator? What differently one aspect or two aspects they change in the whole process of the existing product or the service, which created them to be a game changer, right? So problem identification is the biggest challenge, I guess, in the whole process. And then when you talk about solutions, again, after a certain amount of time, it's not a hard and fast rule book which says, okay, this is the amount of time which you need to spend on problem or solution or fit. It is finally when you start interacting with the consumer, you show your MVP, you kind of get, insights from them, and then you start fast prototyping, right? Making those considerable amount of changes and kind of thinking of pitching it to the investors with that data and a little bit of attraction, and then taking your journey towards the fit.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite Anuja Biani for the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. I am glad to be here to express my vote of thanks. A special thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Umesh Rathod, for accepting our invitation and for being with us here today. Your thoughts have truly inspired us. We are very sure that we school students will You'll come up with amazing startups in near future with your guidance and motivation. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Anuja, Kshitija, Sagar, and the whole team at V School Mumbai and Bengaluru for having me. And thank you to our director, Professor Dr. Uday Salunki sir, for inspiring so many young minds. And I think being a pioneer in having hackathons and starting that, igniting that kind of a process and in Mumbai, obviously IIT always had it, but having a B school doing it was a kind of a game changer, I believe. And I wish you all the best for the hackathons which are lined up. So take the most out of it, go with an open mind, don't have prejudices, don't have any personal myopia. That is one of the major things which startup founder thinks that what I think is right.
Sure.
So that is the lasting thoughts. And yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, sir.